Alright, so we've just finished the video on organizing your bin, the importance of bin organizational management, make it easier for you. We talked a little bit about the splice in tool. We talked a little bit about the overwrite tool. Remember, red are destructive tools in AVID, so you have to be careful. But in this movie, what I want to talk about is the smart tool palette, okay? And that is included in the timeline. Let me zoom in. It's down here, and it's these group of tools here to the left. And if we click on that toggle, it turns them all on and it turns them all off. All right, that's very helpful and useful to know. So let's talk about a few of them. Let's talk about this yellow arrow first. Officially, the name is Extract, Splice In, Segment Mode. I don't know that anyone ever calls it that. Most people just call it the yellow arrow tool. Okay, now let me zoom back out to show you what it does. Just like the Splice In, the segment mode, that yellow arrow tool, what it does is it allows you to move clips. So let's pretend we have created our sequence, which we did, and we've created a sort of a rough cut. We have some files in order of the way that we want them to be seen. But now as we're looking and we're dragging through the position indicator here, we look at this one and we really want this video to appear before a little earlier in time. So all you do is click on that yellow arrow to select it, click on your video footage, and you click and hold with your mouse and drag it to the left. Now if you notice, there's a little bitty white box around it, and if I let go right now, it'll place it right there, right where I'm at. But let's say I want it right in between those two edit points. If I hold Command, it'll snap to the edit points. If I let go of my left mouse button, it snaps it right in there and moves all of the other video files to the right. So nothing really gets replaced, it just gets moved earlier in time. Alright, so I'm going to Command S to save the file. I did something good. And the trick with any of these tools here, because they can be destructive, when you use them, you want to turn them off after you're done using them. Okay? Why? Because if I have this yellow arrow tool on, and let's say by chance I'm moving crazy, and I grab Cowboy, or maybe I grab this one, and I move it on accident, I didn't mean to, and now I let go, look what happened now. If we look, now we watch it, we've got the car, we got a little bit of that one file, we've got this file, and then we go back to that. That's not what we want. Update later. That's not what we want. Okay, so I'm going to Command Z to make that go away, and I'm going to uncheck that yellow arrow when I'm done. Now the red arrow tool, which is officially named the Lift Overwrite Segment Mode tool, when I click on that, it looks sort of the same because you can click and highlight files just like you did with the yellow arrow tool, but with this you actually overwrite. So let's say I want to grab that Looking at Chicks again, and now I drag it over here. Now I officially overwrite. Whenever I let go of my mouse, I'm overwriting everything else. So if I let go right here, I've overwritten this middle wagon road driving, and I've left this big gap here. Okay, which may be what you want. Sometimes you need a little space, but you just have to know what each tool does. Okay, that those red arrow tools or the red tools in general in AVID can be destructive, so you have to be careful. I'm going to Command Z to do that back and uncheck the red arrow. All right. Now let's talk about the trim modes. The trim modes look like little film canisters. We'll go with the ripple trim first. And the trim mode really is when you want to do some small adjustments in between your video clips. Okay. So we're talking usually pretty small. Let's say we want to change this here. When I have the yellow canister on and I click right in between my clips, you get into trim mode. Now it doesn't look like you've done much, but the composer actually changed into a trim mode window. And the left side corresponds to the left side of these dual roller pink rollers here, the wagon LS down the road, and the right side is the cowboy video. Now let's say I wanted to just affect the cowboy. I'm going to click on the right hand side of that blue line, and I'm only affecting, this is called the single roller trim. I'm only affecting the cowboy clip. And since I'm in ripple trim, everything else is going to shift downstream. I'm going to click and drag, and let's say I want it to appear right when he's the cowboy's coming into the frame. Now I've shortened this footage and all of the other files have come along with it. All right, and I've actually taken away 82 frames from that particular file. You can do a single roller trim on either side, or you can do a dual roller trim, which we'll talk about a little later. But again, I've done something. I'm going to save file, Command S. If I want to get rid of the trim mode or get out of trim mode, I'm going to click on this time code bar either at the top or the bottom of my timeline. And now I'm back to my project, my sequence. I'm going to uncheck my yellow roller trim, and I'm going to check the overwrite trim, the red film canister, now red, destructive. So when I click, it looks very similar, right? We're in dual roller trim here. We got the A side, which is the wagon LS down the road, the B side, which is the cowboy. And if I click on one side here, what happens now is I'm going to get rid of that footage here. If you notice, the car on the left is moving backwards. I'm actually getting rid of negative 80 frames, right? And I'm going to leave a big gap, which at some times you might need that gap, but not always, okay? So pay attention to what you're doing and what tools you're in, because the red tools in AVID can be destructive. I'm going to Command Z to take that away. I'm going to uncheck the trim tool, the overwrite trim button, and click out of trim to get back into my project, Command S to save the file. So that's a little bit about it. The very last tool here is the transition manipulation tool. We won't talk about this just yet, but it allows you to move when we get into transitions in between, let's say fades, cross dissolves. You can change that transition in between that using that tool. We'll talk about that more later. I want to talk to you a little bit more about these tools as well, extract and lift. Okay, let's say, you gotta work with me here. Let's say we have spent an awful amount of time just spending time loading these clips in the order that we want and setting it up. Let's pretend there's a voiceover and he's talking about, you know, when I drive with my cows in the way, something, something, something. Okay, so you've timed it out, and this particular looking at chicks is really doesn't make any sense. So you want to get rid of this particular file, but you want everything else to stay the same. So in that instance, you would use the extract. Nope, I'm sorry, lift. Ha! So what you want to do, you position your timeline marker over that segment. You hit the letter T on the keyboard to mark that clip. And you notice it makes an in and an out just on the timeline. And then you can lift. And lift corresponds with the letter Z on the keyboard. And what it does is it lifts out that footage and leaves a blank space, so you can replace it with something else. So everything else stays in its place. If you've timed it out, if you spent a lot of time timing things out, this is very useful. I'm going to Command Z to get rid of that. And if you want to get rid of your in and out points, you can hit the letter G on the keyboard to get rid of those in and out. You could also, if you really wanted to, you go to Command click and make an in, Command click to snap, make an out. You could do that, but T is so much easier if you can remember. So instead of lifting it, I want to extract it. And what extract will do is it'll remove it, but it's going to move everything else downstream. Watch. And that corresponds with the letter X on the keyboard. Okay, I'm going to Command Z to do that back. And so there's a little bit about extract, lift, the Smart Tool Palette. Get familiar with some of these tools because you'll be using them as you're fine-tuning your sequences and your projects. While we're here too, I'd like to show you in the track selector panel, you've got this little, looks like a little monitor, and that's exactly what it is. If this for some reason turns off, look what happened to my record window. We no longer see what's on there. So make sure that if something goes haywire, make sure that your little monitors are on. And on the left side, remember the left side of this track selector panel is all about the source. If we uncheck this, we've also removed what is visible to us on that source monitor. So keep that in mind while you're working, and I hope this video helps. Thanks.